but they don't have to be. While we often associate louder with better, which led to the infamous loudness wars during the 90s, louder isn't always necessarily better. Today we'll be talking about Tiny Glade and what I really enjoy regarding its sound design. In Tiny Glade, you are given, well, a tiny glade, and there you can build anything you can think of really. To be honest, when I picked this game up, I thought the tools were limiting. Turns out I was just lacking creativity. There's some absolute wizards out there making some incredible builds. I have a while till I get to that level, but I'm still proud of a few builds I did. I'll showcase what I made later in the video. Without further ado, let's jump into the sound of Tiny Glade. The very first thing which caught my eye once I started my first glade and zoomed out was the environmental change. In a sense that once you zoom out, you hear distant winds, and also the building is attenuated to let the player feel as if they're far away. A stark contrast to how the environment sounds when you zoom all the way in. It feels personal. Also, what I really enjoy was the sound tied to the camera movement. When you move around and end up going through trees, there's leaves rustling being heard. It's very attentive. There are many glade types to choose from in Tiny Glade, and each has its own distinct theme, both visually and sonically. Summer feels different from autumn, and spring has its own vibe from winter, which itself has its own unique charm. Oh, and there's also Olden, the run-down glade as I like to call it. I really dig that, as the sound benefits the space, and whichever builds you do make, it enhances them. Onto the main course. While I did notice the environment first, what really captivated me was the building sounds. Two, in particular, drawing walls and expanding roofs. The sounds are just so satisfying. It feels responsive and tactile, which is important for such an experience. While they kept the sounds themselves bound to realism, it is very much stylized to fit the contents of the game. There is a devlog which I found on Steam, where the sound designer Martin Vale shares how they created some of the sounds. The fences were mostly done by tapping fingers on the table, and Martin also mentions that they used an old chess piece from his grandpa's collection to get some of the sounds for the fences. The roof tiles for when you change building height were done by flipping through a notebook and layering appropriately. What this shows you is that you ought to be creative in finding a source for a particular sound you need. I knew I wanted to redesign drawing walls, as that's a core mechanic. I found an old roof tile and proceeded to drag it across stone and move it in various ways to get certain sounds. I also inevitably smashed it into a few pieces and dragged my hand through it. Quite satisfying if I do say so myself. What I wanted to showcase with this redesign is the attention to detail the game has to this feature. Knock Knock Audio, the team which put all the audio together for this game, used Fmod to implement the sounds. Now Fmod is an audio middleware, a software which you can use to implement sounds and audio into a game. It's this little logo which you may have noticed in some game titles. They use this software to create a bunch of different parameters which change the sound based on the state of the wall. For example, if you're moving around a short wall, the sound of the bricks will be lighter, while moving a tall wall, while moving tall walls or large buildings will make them feel heavy. Same goes for the speed at which you draw the walls. All of these movements and wall states are accounted for to provide a unique sound experience. It would have been much easier to simply create one wall sound and leave it at that, but hearing it over and over with no variety will get annoying very quickly. Hence, these parameters are crucial to avoid that audio fatigue. I did 2 variations of this redesign, where I used the roof tile you saw me record, and the other is a rock tumble sample. Both were put through a granular generator and faceplant, and via my MIDI keyboard I created the sounds as they appear. The main goal was to represent the changing nature of the sound. As I drag the wall taller, the sounds get deeper and heavier, and it gets lighter when I drag it down. Here's the brick version in full. And here's the rock one. Both have very different vibes, but are viable. These are essentially some things which stood out to me while I was playing the game. Deleting water and flowers creates the water and flower sound effects, even if nothing is being deleted. Now I don't really vibe with that because I like feedback for when something is being deleted, like how trees work, for example. I'm very much nitpicking here, but I've noticed that when petting ducks, sometimes they would quack normally, and other times they would just produce this half-quack of sorts. I'm not really sure if that's a bug or not, but I just wanted to point it out. All in all, the audio of this game does exactly what it's supposed to do. It aids the visuals in creating a relaxing environment, and does a heck of a good job at that. Kudos to Martin Kvale for the sound design, and Oda Tilset for the music in this game. And of course the core dev team of Anna and Tom. Y'all really made something I can sink hours into while not getting bored of the audio. Great job. Thanks for watching this episode. It was a bit of a shorter one, but I really enjoyed making it. Do tell me your feedback in the comments. It's really appreciated. Alright, thank you.